listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are engaging in some form of infidelity deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. No shame, no blame, and no judgments. You can talk to me about the things that seem too messy or weird or stigmatized to share with your best friend or your spouse or even your therapist. I offer compassionate, confidential coaching via Zoom so we can work together no matter where you're located. To schedule an introductory coaching session with me, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to speak with you. All right, so today we're going to talk about the idea that the grass is always greener. And of course, this phrase can be applied to many situations, but in the context of my coaching practice, I often hear it from clients who are in a particular situation. They're married, they've been unhappy in their marriage or ambivalent about their marriage for a while. And, often there's cheating involved just because I mostly work with people who are dealing with infidelity in one way or another. And maybe the client has been having an affair, or they've had an affair and now it's over, or they've, been engaging in something else that they think counts as infidelity. And they're trying to figure out what they want to do about their whole situation. And a big part of their situation is their marriage. And on the one hand, the client is often pretty sure that they do want to leave their marriage. But on the other hand, they're afraid that they'll get divorced and they'll come to realize that they made a big mistake, and they're afraid that the whole thing will end up being a case of the grass looking greener on the other side. And one of the reasons why people who are contemplating leaving their marriages sometimes believe this is because their divorced friends tell them this. I can't tell you how many times clients have said to me something like this: well, all of my divorced friends were unhappy in their marriages, and then they got divorced and they're still unhappy. And they all tell me not to get divorced because the grass is always greener. And you don't know that until you are actually on the other side, meaning you're divorced and you're on the other side of your marriage. All right, here's the thing. It is definitely true that some people get divorced because they're unhappy in their marriages. And then they find that they're unhappy being divorced too. And then they regret getting divorced. This absolutely happens. It is exactly what some people's experience of getting divorced is like. But that does not mean it has to be your experience. So here's my rough summary of what happens a lot. People get married for all kinds of reasons. And some people get married even though they don't really want to get married. Some people get married with great intentions, but they have no idea how to deal with the inevitable challenges a committed long-term relationship brings. And when people find themselves unhappy in their marriages, as many people do at some point, they have no idea what to do about it. So maybe they try a few things to make things better in the relationship. But when those things don't bring about satisfying results, they figure that the ultimate solution is to get divorced, and that will fix the problem of their unhappiness. And then they do get divorced and they find that they're still unhappy. And they think that the problem is that they should have stayed married. Here's the real problem though, people. Many people get married and divorced for reasons they aren't entirely clear on. Many people don't know what they really want out of being married. And many people don't really know what they want out of getting unmarried or getting divorced. And then they're surprised when they aren't happy with their choices regarding marriage and divorce. Now, I want to make it absolutely clear that I think it is completely understandable that so many people think about marriage and divorce in these ways. I'm not saying that these are helpful ways of thinking about marriage and divorce. And I am going to suggest other ways of thinking about marriage and divorce momentarily. But first, it's really important to point out that marriage has been strongly encouraged in our society for a long time and continues to be. This has changed, of course, to some extent, and it continues to change. But even if, our collective orientation to marriage is different from it was, say, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 200 years ago, many people have experienced and continue to experience enormous pressure to get married, maybe from their families or their communities or their professions or from everyone they know. And along with that, many people also internalize the idea that getting married is a good thing, or at least a thing we ought to do or will probably do. Many folks grow up wanting to get married, or at least expecting they will get married. And some people want or expect to get married without really knowing why, or without really knowing what they want to experience within marriage and how they want to go about marriage. And all of this is totally understandable. As sociologists and anthropologists have found, in many societies across time and place, getting married was and still is a major step in achieving what social scientists call full personhood. Not just adulthood, but full personhood. And the theoretical and empirical explications of this are fascinating and important. But the summary point for our purposes today is that in a lot of times and places across human history, you weren't considered a fully legitimate human worthy of the full esteem of your community unless you're married, unless you are married. And of course, having kids plays into full personhood too, and the achievement of full personhood. But often marriage is considered a prerequisite to having kids. Even if marriage isn't as compulsory as it used to be, or at least isn't as compulsory as it used to be in some places, it may still be expected. And even if it isn't required, and even if marriage isn't considered the only legitimate form of romantic partnership, or the pinnacle of romantic association, or the pinnacle of human experience for that matter, marriage is still idealized pretty widely. Marriage is still valorized. And these messages are conveyed to us directly and indirectly in subtle ways and in not very subtle ways. And so, there's so much more we could say about that. But the basic point for today's purposes is that a lot of folks get married because it's the thing to do, because it was explicitly expected of them, or because they expected it of themselves, because it seemed like the next step in life, or because they were in a long-term relationship with someone that had been serious for a while, and it seemed like the only options were to get married or to break up, and they didn't really want to break up, so they got married. In other words, there's so many other examples that we could get into, but the point is a lot of people go into marriage for reasons they aren't 100% clear on, or they aren't 100% thrilled about, or both. And on top of that, many people go into marriage with very little idea of what specifically marriage means to them, or how they want to do marriage, so to speak, what they want their marriage to be like, what they want to get out of marriage. And, in addition to that, many people get married not knowing themselves very well overall, and not having a very clear sense of what they want out of life. Right. And this is understandable because, we only figure out life as we go. Many people tend to get married in the first half of their lives. Some folks get married like in very young adulthood, we could say. And so this isn't a judgment of anyone. We can all be forgiven for being in a position like this. It's a totally understandable state of affairs or predicament to be in, even if it doesn't seem like a predicament. I mean, predicament in the neutral sense. But what happens as a result of all of this for many people is they get married, and it's exciting and great. Everybody loves a wedding, right? A wedding is something we all love to go crazy for. And then after the initial kind of buzz of the achievement wears off, things maybe don't work out all that well. Or maybe things work out pretty well for a while, or really well for a while, until they don't. And then what? most of us don't really know how to answer the question of what do we do when our marriage doesn't seem great anymore, or doesn't seem satisfying at all, or we're downright unhappy in our marriage. And I think this is one of the cruelest ironies in our society. Our collective orientation to romantic relationships is we glorify the heck out of marriage. But on the other hand, we are not collectively very honest about how difficult marriage can be. We don't talk much about how to make marriage work and to work through challenges that inevitably come up during years of being intimately involved with another human being. But let me be clear, I know there is a whole industry devoted to dispensing relationship advice. And I realize that technically I am part of that industry. But my opinion is that a lot of the relationship advice out there is horseshit. Maybe it's well-intentioned horseshit, but it is horseshit all the same in my humble, or perhaps not so humble, opinion. So what I really mean here is I think we collectively suffer from a dearth of useful guidance about marriage and useful conversations about what to do if we are having relationship trouble, or if we think we might want to not be married anymore after we have gotten married. And, the point of all of this for today's episode is that for a lot of people, when they find themselves unhappy in their marriages, they don't know what the hell to do. And they may not have that many tools at their disposal. And the tools at their disposal may not end up being helpful. So getting divorced may seem like the obvious solution. If the marriage isn't great and the things you've tried to make the marriage better haven't been successful, then maybe it's time to get rid of the marriage, right? And in a way, this makes perfect sense. But then what happens is after the divorce, people sometimes realize that there actually were things about the marriage that they really appreciated, and things about the marriage. And, even if, and they also realize that there are things about not being married that they really don't like. And so this leads people to believe, oh my God, the grass was always greener. And so they go around telling their friends, don't get divorced. The grass is always greener. Now, here's what I have to say to that. There is a difference between being unhappy in your marriage and not knowing what to do about it, or not having any of the things you try to do about it work out, and then deciding to get divorced because you don't know how else to address your unhappiness. That's option one. And option two, coming to a very deliberate and thoughtful conclusion that you want to get divorced and knowing exactly why you want to get divorced. Divorce can be a great thing if you know what you want to get out of it and you're willing to make that happen. Just like marriage can be a great thing if you know what you want out of it and you're willing to make that happen. Let me go on record saying that marriage isn't inherently good. And divorce isn't inherently bad. But a lot of people think that stuff. A lot of people believe that marriage is a fundamental good and divorce is fundamentally bad. But even if a lot of people believe that, that does not mean that's how it works. And it certainly does not have to mean that that's the way it is for you. But just like it's unreasonable to expect that marriage is going to make us completely happy in and of itself, it's unreasonable to expect that divorce is going to solve all of our problems or relieve us of all of our unhappiness, especially if we think that marriage is the source of our unhappiness. But that's exactly what a lot of people believe is going to happen. And that's why I think that we have this shared idea of, the grass is always greener, or the idea that you think the idea that the thing you think you want isn't going to bring you satisfaction. So you should just be happy with what you already have and not hope for anything better. Right? We have all of these crazy ideas about cause and effect, and then we think that's proof that we can't ever have what we want. Instead, what I want to suggest is that when we make choices for reasons we aren't all that clear about, and then find ourselves unhappy with those choices, And then we make different choices in an attempt to rid ourselves of that unhappiness, but we find that we still aren't happy. We're giving ourselves proof that it's never really possible to have what you want or to be happy. But what if we set things up in a whole different way? What if we didn't operate that way at all? What if we didn't believe it had to be that way? I believe that it is completely possible to get what you want when you know what you want. You do have to figure out what you want. You do have to clarify what you want in order to go after it and then have it. But that is completely possible too. It's possible to say, yes, I prefer these kinds of experiences in life. And no, I don't prefer these other kinds of experiences in life. And it is possible to seek out more of what we prefer and say no to what we don't prefer. A lot of people don't believe that though. And then it becomes true. What we believe is true becomes true for us, becomes our experience. But in other words here, what I'm saying is if you are married and unhappy in your marriage, you do not have to buy into the idea that surely you will see that the grass was greener if you get divorced. I believe that if you are clear on why you want to get divorced and what kind of life you want to create for yourself outside of your current marriage, you can have the kinds of experiences you want to have. You can create the different life that you want to create, and you can be very satisfied with your decision to get divorced. But the operative word in that last sentence was create. A divorce in and of itself isn't going to bring you everything you want, even if one of the things you want is to not be married to your current spouse anymore. Divorce will certainly change some of your circumstances, and it may open up new possibilities for you. But what you do with those new possibilities or new options is up to you. You can intentionally create an amazing life for yourself post-divorce, even if there are things about your marriage that you do end up missing. And just as importantly, you can make a clear decision about whether or not to get divorced that is well thought out and carefully considered so that you can ultimately feel like you have made the decision that was right for you, right? So what do you actually do if you've been contemplating divorce or considering contemplating divorce, but you're worried that you might do so only to later regret it and believe that the grass was always greener? Well, here's where you can begin. Number one, get clear on why you want to get divorced. This may sound ridiculously obvious, but push yourself to get really specific and then get even more specific. Ask yourself this. What specific options will divorce open up to you that are definitely not available to you if you remain in your current marriage? Number two, get clear on what you appreciate about your current marriage and your spouse. It is quite likely that there are things you appreciate about your marriage, even if you have been unhappy in it for quite a while. It is quite likely that there are some things you like and love and appreciate and even enjoy about your spouse, even if you are pretty darn sure you don't want to be romantically involved with them anymore. And being able to acknowledge these things is not a sign that you shouldn't get divorced, at least not necessarily. The point of getting clear on what you do appreciate about your relationship is not to convince yourself to stay in it. The point is to take a comprehensive inventory of your situation so that you can make a clear choice, and so that if you do divorce, you can do so with appreciation for your spouse, or at least neutrality towards your spouse, instead of resentment towards your spouse. Ending a relationship because you're unhappy and you think your spouse is the cause of your unhappiness is very different from ending a relationship because you see many good qualities in your spouse and in your relationship, and you also know that you don't want to be romantically partnered with them anymore. Both of those things can be true at once. You can appreciate someone, you can value what you've shared, and you can also want to not be in the marriage anymore. Furthermore, and this takes us into point number 3, it is quite possible that you will miss some aspects of your marriage should you choose to end it, even if you are totally certain you do not want to stay in the marriage. So it's really, Speaking is hard today, guys. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with my words. It's really important to get clear on what you are willing to tolerate in terms of change. Even if you get divorced for reasons you feel great about, you may also give up some things that you are truly sad to relinquish. And there's value in anticipating these possibilities, anticipating that, even if the divorce is truly the right choice for you, it may also be sad and uncomfortable in some respects as well. And deciding ahead of time whether or not you're willing to learn how to accommodate the sadness and the challenges and the changes, or whether you'd prefer not to make them. That's an option too. You could look at all of this stuff in your marriage that you appreciate and say, gosh, I don't think I want to give that up. But the point here is that, often it's not that clear cut. Often it's not, a matter of like, well, I'm going to stay in a situation and there's no opportunity cost to that, or I'm going to leave a situation and there's nothing I'm going to be sad to leave behind. Usually it's a mixed bag, right? And we've got to be aware of this. And to that end, I really want to emphasize that being sure that you're going to be sad about some aspects of your divorce doesn't mean the divorce is the wrong choice for you. Even if a transition is sad and challenging in some ways, that doesn't mean it's bad. Endings are a part of life. Sometimes we have to compost the old in order to fertilize possibilities for our future. And this is another thing I think we do a terrible job of talking about in our society, at least for the most part, for the vast majority of the time. There are so many moments in life that are really quite sad or quite lonely or quite full of heartbreak and anguish and all kinds of other feelings that we sometimes consider problematic. But what if these kinds of feelings aren't problematic at all? What if sadness is just as worth experiencing as happiness? What if heartache is just as valuable of an element of the human experience as joy? And moreover, what if feeling sadness and experiencing challenges and disruption in our lives just isn't a problem? What if it's an important and natural and even worthwhile byproduct of choosing to live our lives consciously and honestly? Many big changes that we can make in our lives, both within and outside of our romantic lives, come with things that we may really like, and also with stuff we might not like quite as much. And that's just the way it goes. Life is always a mixed bag to one degree or another. So it's important to recognize that leaving a marriage you're unhappy in may be challenging and sad, even if it is also totally worth it. The problem is not the challenges or the sadness. The problem is in thinking that we shouldn't have to experience challenges or sadness or loneliness or disruption or heartache or anguish or whatever it is that we're feeling or hoping to avoid feeling. Okay. To wrap up, let me reiterate that when we make a big change or make a big decision in our lives, we're better set up to benefit from that change or to ultimately enjoy that change or to ultimately decide or believe that the choice was the right choice for us if we're really clear about why we're making the decision we're making. If you know why you are getting divorced and you feel good about those reasons, and you also realize that there may be some things that you might not 100% love about getting divorced, you are much better positioned to find satisfaction in your decision and enjoyment in your future rather than waking up one morning and saying, oh shit, I'm unhappy being divorced. I guess the grass was greener. I guess I made the wrong decision. I guess I should have just stayed married. So if you are grappling with these kinds of issues and you would like some help dealing with your feelings, getting clear on what you want, and making some concrete decisions about what you're going to do, let's work together. Considering whether or not you want to end your marriage is an important decision. And it's worth it to invest in thinking through your situation clearly and effectively and systematically instead of getting lost in your own thought vortices. Vortices. Vortices is the plural of vortex, right? Right. Okay. Anyway, I can help you approach thinking about this big decision in a way that makes it manageable to contemplate and I can help you cut through confusion and indecision and approach making a choice that is truly right for you. I offer confidential, compassionate coaching via Zoom so we can work together no matter where you are. And if you'd like to schedule an introductory coaching session with me, you can do that through my website, which is mariemurphyphd.com. I look forward to speaking with you. And of course, if you have enjoyed what you've heard on the podcast today, I would very much appreciate it if you would head on over to iTunes to rate and review the show. Thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.